Thank you very much. So what are we talking about today? The talks are all about culture, culture being a noun, definition, a way of life. But let's have a think about that. I used to live in England. I've now moved to Korea. So my way of life has changed. I use chopsticks and a spoon to eat food more now than before. I get involved in ceremonies in Korea for solar, so bowing and other cultural experiences. I eat a lot more kimchi now than I did when I was in England. But I don't look any different. But what specifically we're going to talk about? I'm going to mention my family, but I'm going to talk about schools in the UK and my school life. Please ask any questions. I think you're aware you'll get a chance at the end to ask questions, but if you don't understand something or you do have, just put your hand up. There's lots of you, so you may have to wave a little bit to get my attention, but please do so. So, my name is Daniel Leon Green. So, Daniel is my first name, so my friends call me Daniel. My family name is Green, so my father, my mother, Mr. Green, Mrs. Green, my wife is Mrs. Green. But then there's Leon. Leon is my middle name. And I don't use it very much. It's in official documents, so my passport, my Korean ID card. But why do we have middle names? Well, in England, it's to remember a family member. So in this case, my grandfather. So that there's a way of remembering my grandfather every time I see my name. And that's the only reason for it. I'm English, and I'm an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer, not a teacher. So, a map of the world, and this is where I'm from. I notice on this map, England looks very big, much bigger than France. It is wrong. England is much smaller than France. Not too different size to Korea. And hopefully, can you see Korea? So, I'm from England. If you see there, the white area, the lighter coloured area, is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And this area here is England. The red cross is approximately where I used to live. So I used to live on the south coast, near the sea, and very close to France. This, me and my brothers when we were young. I think it is me in the middle. This is my older brother. He is 18 months older than me. And this is my other older brother, who's only 10 minutes older than me. So what does that make him? Twin? Yes, absolutely. Do you see a similarity? This is my twin brother with his wife. And this is him celebrating. What would, if he's dressed up like that, what would he be celebrating? Halloween. Yeah, Halloween. Can anybody see what film character he's dressed up from? No, it's supposed to be, it's very similar. Do you know the film A Nightmare Before Christmas? That was the idea, at least anyway. So this is my older brother and his family. So his wife and 2 of his 4 children. My older brother lives in Belgium. So can anybody name the 2 languages they speak in Belgium? Can anybody name one of the languages they speak in Belgium? Yes?
English
No. Anybody else? I think the French pronunciation, Belgique. No, that's okay. Belgium is unusual. Belgium, most people speak French, but there is a large population that speak Flemish. And my brother is in a very unusual situation because he speaks English at home and he lives in a French area. So when he goes out, he speaks French to the shopkeeper, he speaks French to his neighbours. But when he goes to work, he lives in an area that speaks Flemish. So he has to speak Flemish at work. So in one day, he has to speak 3 different languages. That's hard work. This is my cat. She's 17 years old. Or she will be 17 this year. And her name is Nabby. And Nabby, when she was in England, was very unusual. Obviously in Korea, common name. She has one advantage, which is cat speak in England and cat speak in Korea seems to be the same. So she hasn't had to learn another language. So this is Helsham Secondary School. The town I lived in was called Helsham, and this is the school that I went to. Schools in England, there are many different types of school, but most people go to public schools. So public schools are schools that are free to go to. It's paid for, the government pays for it. But 2 of the alternatives are private schools, so schools where you pay to go to. And the other thing that happens in England is home education. This is where you stay home and your parents teach you. There are people who stay at home and their parents teach them. Not many people. Over 90% of students in England go to public schools. This is part of the same school. This is the old part of the school. This part of the school is over 100 years old and it's still used. I actually had classes in that classroom. And this is a picture of Helsham School from above. It's that area there. The picture you saw earlier was from there. The old part of the school is here. And you can see it's really quite a big area with all the different buildings having a different subject that's taught. So that building teaches science. You have a question? Yes?
Similar as baseball stadium.
Sorry?
Similar size as baseball stadium.
I think it's possibly bigger. I can tell you, I don't know how big a baseball stadium is, but I worked out that it's 55,000 square metres, the whole ground, approximately. It may be a bit more or a bit less, but it is a very big area. As you can see, it's got a large field attached. This is very normal in schools in England. The schools in town don't have such a big area, but away in big towns, so in London, the schools are slightly smaller, but outside of London, the schools normally have a very big grassed area. But that area there is a tennis court, so you can see how big the area is. Diversity in schools. Do you remember I said, I don't look any different, but my way of life has changed since I've come to Korea. So we can't always tell by looking at someone how diverse their culture is, but we can guess. For those who remember last time, I showed a picture of students in Brighton, and you could see there were a big difference in appearance between the students at Brighton. Here, less so. And it's the same in Korea. If you go to Seoul, you'll see a big variation in cultures. There are people from all over the world living and working in Seoul, more than Cheongju. And where I live in Jincheon, there is less again. And we can guess that there is less. Helsham is a small town. it's some distance away from London. So, what was my school day like? My day would start when I was young. There would be bang, bang, bang on my door. Daniel! And my father would be shouting at me to wake up. I would jump up, run to the bathroom, brush my teeth, get myself cleaned up. And then my next job was to go to my brother's room, bang, bang, bang on his door. Simon, Simon! And he would get up. And it was very important that I did this, because if I said, oh, I'll stay in bed longer, it's not a problem, then there would be trouble, because I wouldn't wake my brother up, and then my brother woke my other brother up, and I would be in big trouble. So that's how my day started. I would then go back to my room and I would put my school uniform on. My school uniform looked very similar to this. And the girls that went to the school had a very similar uniform to that. And as you can see, for the girls, they could wear trousers if they wanted to, or a skirt. We would always have to, on the way to school, wear our blazer. We could wear a jacket if it got really cold, or a jumper underneath. But that's very similar. So I'd put my school uniform on. I would pack my bag, ready for the day. Very similar to you. So maybe I would put my PE kit, which is my sport kit, maybe football kit, in my bag. I would put my books in the bag, ready for the day. So my maths book or my English study. And then I would go downstairs and I would make my breakfast. This is the breakfast I used to have. I think it's slightly, I haven't seen this in Korea, but it's Weetabix, which is wheat squashed together. It's not very sweet. You add milk and maybe some honey or sugar on the top. But it's quite a common breakfast. It's quite easily available in England. It was quite a common thing to have. So I would eat my breakfast quickly, grab my bag, and walk to school. This is the road I used to walk to school on. This end of the road was where I used to live, and the other end of the road is where the school was. I nearly always walked to school, but as same in Korea, you can take a bus. Some parents used to drive people to school, or you could cycle to school. When I arrived at school, we would meet up with our friends. We would talk for a little while, and then we would go to the classroom. We would go to our form room. Our form room was just a normal classroom, but this was the classroom that we would always go to. And for the time I was at school, it was the same room every day. And we had a form teacher, and this was the teacher who looked after us. They may teach us in other subjects, but their main job first thing in the morning was to take the register and answer any questions or tell us any information we needed. So the teacher would go, Daniel, and I'd go, yes, miss. We would call teachers. There were two things we could say. We could either say, yes, miss, or yes, sir, which was the most common, or if there was more than one teacher, we would call them by their surname. So Mr. Griffiths, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Thompson, and that's how we addressed the teachers. Sometimes, I'm sure it's the same in Korea, we'd have school assembly. So all the school would gather in one big room, and the head of the school, the headmaster, would talk to us. They may just give us information, part of the school we couldn't go to because there was work there. They may be introducing someone who was going to talk to us. There were lots of different reasons. And this would happen maybe once a week or once a month. Once we had finished, we would go to our first lesson. Lessons normally lasted about 1 hour. And this is very typical of a classroom in England. You can see that they look all really excited to be in the classroom. But you can see the uniform was very similar, and it was the same when we got to the classroom. We were allowed to take our jackets off and get comfortable, and then we would study. But this looks very typical for a classroom. We would have normally 3 lessons, and then we would have a break. So when we had our break, I would always have a packed lunch. And as you can see, a difference between Korea and England. No kimbap in my packed lunch, but sandwiches. And fruit and a drink of water. I would have, do you know crisps? Yeah? So I would normally have crisps and a chocolate bar as well. Not so healthy, but that was how I used to enjoy having my lunch. But you could also go to a school canteen. School canteens when I was young weren't very good. But as I got older and today, the food is quite good. You can see typical English food, I think. Some vegetables, some carrots, some potato, and some sort of meat being served to them. You did have to pay for it, but it was only a small amount of money. But I used to enjoy my sandwiches. That used to give me the opportunity to eat either in the canteen, if the weather was bad, or to talk to friends, or I could go outside and have my sandwiches if the weather was nice. So that used to finish, and we used to go outside and play. As you can see earlier, as I explained, there is a large grass field, so we could go and play sports. We could go and play football. We could meet our friends, run around and enjoy ourselves outside. If the weather was bad, we could go to the canteen. So what did we used to play? Some traditional school games in England. Conkers. Anybody heard of conkers before? No? Not too complicated a game. But you recognise that type of nut? Can you see there? I don't know what the Korean name is. Do you know what the Korean name for? No. They're a type of nut, and they're really common in England. And so they fall off the trees, and we used to collect them. They have a green outside, which is spiky, so we used to have to peel them. We used to drill a hole through and tie a string on. The game was very simple. As you can see, he is about to hit the one conker with the other conker. And then you would take it in turns. One would hold, like that, and the other would hit it with the other string. And the rules were simple. If your conker fell off your string, you lost. But the string, what we used to cheat, so we used to take the conkers and bake them in an oven or put them in vinegar to try and make them stronger. This didn't always work. And the other thing that we used to do that was naughty is if we didn't have a string, we would take our shoelaces off and use them. Our parents didn't like this because then we would break our shoelaces. Oh, look what's happened. And our parents weren't so keen on the idea. Hopscotch. Do you know hopscotch? Yeah, similar game in Korea. So I assume the rules are very similar, where you must stand where there is a single box on one leg and where there are two boxes with two legs. And you throw, normally in England, a stone onto the number and you have to jump across. Same in Korea? Yes. Yeah? That was a very popular game when I was young. And quite a few playgrounds now in England have the areas marked out.
Do people in England still play those?
Yes, the conkers not so much. Many schools get a bit worried about people hitting and what would possibly happen, but they still do play it. Hopscotch, very popular still. And one other game they used to play, British Bulldog. Has anybody ever heard of British Bulldog? It's quite a simple game, normally played in an area like a football area or a tennis court, because you need two lines. One person would stand in the middle and the other people would line up down one side. The person in the middle was the British Bulldog. And the idea is, once everybody lined up, he would shout, "Go," and everybody would have to run from the one line to the other line. If the British Bulldog touched you, you became a British Bulldog as well. So you would run round the outside of them as best you could, but you would start pushing into your friends and someone would get caught. The game would continue with people running from one side to the other side to the other side until there was one person left who wasn't a British Bulldog, and they would win. So you can imagine, to begin with, really easy. One person in the middle, just run round the outside. But towards the end, when there were lots of British Bulldogs and very few people running, it was quite difficult. And this is a game that is still played in schools today. So I have some questions for you. I'll try and do this in groups and see if this works. So who's from group 1? You know you're in teams for asking questions later? Okay, I'll do this a different way. I'll ask per row. So this row first. So this is going to be your question. It's easy because I'll give you the answer for England and you've just got to give me an answer for Korea. So, what time in the morning does your school start? Someone from this row, what time does your school start in the morning? What time is your first lesson? 8:40? Is that the same for all of you? 8:40 in the morning you have to be your first lesson? Yeah? So in England, Helsham School starts at 8:45 in the morning. So very similar. It was 9 o'clock when I was at school, but not such a big difference. So, this row, what time does your school finish?
3:10.
3:10? Similar for everybody, about 3 o'clock your school finishes? 4 o'clock for you. So a little bit different, probably different on age. As you get older, you have to stay longer. The interesting thing, in England, 3:05. And it finishes at 3:05. So no matter what your age is, your official lessons stop then. So in England, up to 11, normally 3:05, pack your bags, go home. No extra lessons. After 11, you may stay a little bit longer to do some study, but somewhere about 5 or 6 o'clock, the school closes. So if you go past a school at 6 o'clock in the evening, the gates will be closed and all the lights will be off. There will be no students in there. There are special times when there's a school performance or adult lessons where the school may open later, but generally somewhere between 5 and 6 o'clock, school closed. So, this line, do you know how many weeks holiday you get a year? So a slightly more difficult question. Any ideas? How much holiday do you get a year? I had to look this up. Does anybody know? Not sure? A guess. Do you have any idea? What's your longest holiday? How long is your summer holiday for school? 1 month? Okay. In England, we get 12 weeks holiday a year. Not all at the same time, but you get 12 weeks holiday from school. And it's slightly easier. At what age do you start school? 8 years old in Korea. In England, we start school at 5. You have to go by law. The day after you turn 5, you must go to school. It doesn't work like that, because you imagine if everybody went to school on the day after their birthday, you would have one new student, then maybe a week later, another new student, then another new student. So what we do is at the beginning of a term, at the beginning of a semester, all the students who will turn 5 go to school. But you must be at 5 years old by law in education. So this gives you some idea of how that holiday works out. So in October, you get 1 week's holiday. Then you have the winter holiday, which is 2 weeks from December, the end of December to January. So that is over Christmas. And Christmas is a very big holiday in England. It's very important. Nearly everybody has some sort of holiday over that period, whether you're working or not. Obviously doctors and some people still work, but a lot of things, Christmas Day, very few things are open in England. So the students get some time the week off before, but then 2nd of January are back to school. Then it's another week's holiday in February, towards the end of February. Then the Easter holiday, another big celebration in England. So we get everybody, it's a national holiday for Easter Friday, and you have the weekend, and then Easter Monday is a national holiday as well. So the students get the week off before and the week off after. Then summer half term, which is 1 week, and then 5 weeks, a nice long summer holiday. And as I remember when I was a student, you start to forget that you ever went to school after 5 weeks. Start to forget all your education. So it felt, when I was young, like a very, very big holiday. Some more questions? I will. Yeah, yes?
Yeah. If you have to get your children go to school, at age 5 by law,
Yeah.
how does the homeschooling,
The rules for homeschooling, the rules are the same. So you have to, if you're homeschooling, you have to tell the government that you're going to homeschool. So you must let the educational board know that you're going to teach your children at home. Then, if they want to, they can come and check your children and come and inspect and check that you are teaching them at home. As I said, it's very unusual, but there is always someone doing that, but the numbers are very, very low. I don't know anybody who did it, but I've seen television programs about people who have done it. But they must have the rules for all schools, whichever school you go to is the same.
I
in the UK.
also wonder how the children, socialize with,
It's the big question. Could you imagine being your parents teaching you at home? Your mother sitting you down and teaching you maths and English? I can't imagine it either. But yes, I can. It's obviously when the children can play in and around the area they live in. But yes, it's a big question. It's one of the questions they ask a lot when people talk about home teaching, that you don't get to meet so many students, you don't get to meet so many friends. So for this line, at what age do you finish going to school? So when does your school finish? You can go and work. 19. Is that English age 19 or Korean age? Korean age. So it would be 18 in the UK. And it's the same in England. At 16, we can stop going to school, but we must continue education. So lots of students continue in the same school from 16 to 18, but you can go to a college, you can go somewhere else and continue education. When I was young, 16. So I had the choice at 16 to leave school and work. No more education. But these days, from 2015, so quite recently, they changed the law and you must continue in education. So, how many classes do you have a day?
8.
8. Wow. Hailsham School, which is the school you saw the photo earlier, has 5 classes a day, each 1 hour long. I checked on their website and checked the schedule. So a more difficult subject, and one you may not know. How many subjects do you study at school? Do you have any idea? It's quite a difficult question, I realise that. Any idea how many subjects? So maths, English, Korean. About 10? In the UK, there are 15 subjects that are commonly taught. The law says that there are 11 subjects. If you're running a school, there are 11 subjects that you must teach. So it's important to say that one subject may be one lesson a month if it's a subject that doesn't require so much information. But things like maths would be maybe 2 lessons a week or more. There are some subjects that may be only 1 lesson a month. But there are commonly 15 subjects. When you are 14 years old, you get to choose. Do you have that in Korea for when you get older, when you get to take exams? Do you get to choose the subjects you take?
No.
No. In England, you get the choice. There are 5 subjects that you must take, but then there are other subjects you get the choice of. The number of subjects you take varies. So it varies from school to school, what they offer, but it also varies on how studious you are. So if you're a very good student and you want to, you can take more subjects, but it's normally somewhere about 8 to 10 subjects that you would choose. So this is interesting. How many hours homework do you think you get a week?
1 hour. 1 hour.
1 hour homework? Yeah, does everybody else think the same? About 1 hour's homework a week? Somewhere around that?
4 hours.
It's interesting. I looked at how accurate this is. Someone did a survey and checked Korea and England and many other countries. The average in the UK is 4.9 hours. So it's about 1 hour every day that you must do homework. That's the average in England. And it's more than Korea, apparently. But you have to remember, as we said, schools finish much earlier in the UK. There are no Hogwons in England, or not very many, none that I know of. Some people have 1-to-1 education, so you would have someone come to your home and teach you. But this is very unusual. And I've not seen any Hogwons in England, and none of my friends I know had extra education apart from at school and maybe help from their parents. So this is very different than Korea, my understanding of Korea. Lots of people, there are Hogwons everywhere I look. Most of my friends teach in Hogwons. So this is a very big difference. So students in Korea, yourselves, spend much more time learning, studying than in England. But that is one of the reasons why our homework is more, because we don't have other opportunities to study so much. So this is the timetable. This is the timetable. You may notice that it's a bit different. When I was speaking about earlier about my day, which is a long time ago, that things have changed slightly. So you can see that they go straight into a lesson. Their first lesson is an hour long. Then they have a 15-minute break. Then another lesson for an hour. And then 5 minutes to get from one classroom to another. And if you remember the picture of the school is quite big. So 5 minutes, it can take a long time, and 5 minutes isn't a lot of time to get, depending on where your lessons are, you could end up running. So another hour lesson, and then a 1 hour break. This is very different than when I was at school. We used to have lunch and the long break together. An hour lesson, lunch just 30 minutes, then mentor or assembly time. So the assembly time is different. My assembly was always normally first thing in the morning. And I assume mentor time is to go and see your form teacher, ask questions, or do further studies. 1 hour lesson, 3 o'clock, go home. There are clubs and other associations that you can join, so you may stay in school a little bit longer, maybe another hour. But as I said, that's normally it. Give you some idea of the subjects we learn. So the compulsory subjects, the subjects that they must teach. If you're a school in England, it is the law, you have to teach these subjects. So literacy, does anybody know what literacy is? Literacy is the ability to speak, read, communicate. So it's a very clever way of saying English. So English, maths, science, design, technology, which is history, geography, art, design, music, physical education. You know physical education? PE, sports. Religious education. Religious education is not only Christianity in England, you learn about other religions as well. Financial education. Do you have that in Korea? Anybody do financial education? So this is something that's quite new. From 2014, they start teaching you so that you can budget. You learn how to open a bank account. You learn how to manage your money. And that was introduced in 2014. Then the additional. So these are options. So some are taught commonly, some are less common. So personal, social, healthcare and education. Citizenship. So citizenship is how to live in England. How to do, where you'd find information out, how libraries, how schooling works, many subjects. One modern foreign language. So it's a foreign language. So in Korea, what's the most common language you learn? So after Korean, you learn what language? English. I can hear people saying it. Yes, a lot of people in Korea. So in England, because we do English to start with, English is our first language. What's the most common second language we learn? Any guesses? Yes, absolutely. Correct. French is the most common. Today there are more and more that are available, but French is the most common language. So these are the subjects. When you turn 14, you have the choice. This looks quite complicated, and there are lots of options here that vary from school to school. So you must do English in some form, you must study maths, you must do A science. There's quite a few options in science, but you must do A science. You must do A modern language or an ancient language, and you must do either history or geography. Those are the lessons you must take. Then on the other side are the choices. The choice looks really big, but it varies from school to school. So your school may not teach film studies, but it may teach drama. And obviously also when you're considering what you want to learn, you're considering what degree you want to do, what further studies you want to do, and there may be, say, astronomy and statistics taught at the same time. You can't be in two places at the same time, so you would have to choose between the two. But you can see the choice is very varied, and it changes from school to school. So some of the more unusual things, modern Hebrew. Do you know modern Hebrew as a language? Very unusual. So that may be only available in maybe a very small amount of schools in England, whereas French, Italian, more commonly today, Chinese is becoming more available as a lesson. But you can see it's quite a lot of choice. It's quite a big choice to make at 14. What am I going to study? What am I going to do? Does anybody know what the qualification is called that we take in England? No? At 14 you start studying for your GCSEs. Once you finish your GCSEs at 16, then you study A-levels. And the A-level is the qualification you use to get into university. So GCSEs are quite important. A-level between 16 and 18 to get into university is very important. And normally the subjects are quite similar. Some more questions? A hard question, yes?
If you want to take additional subject besides compulsory subject, do you have to pay?
No. If you want to, your choice of subjects is what is available within the school, the time available in the school, and how likely you are. So if you want to take extra studies and they're available in the school, they will allow you to do so. There is no charge. Up to 18, basic education is free in England. So no matter how many subjects you want to take, whatever you want to do, it's included, unless you want to go to a private school and then you would pay. But it is free of charge. So any idea how many pupils are in your school? Any idea? 200? Have you got any idea how many students are there? 600. You think? It's a hard question because I didn't know. Hailsham School has 1,160 students attending this year. So you can see there's a lot of students that go to that school. So, how many students are normally in your classes?
28.
Yeah, so 28, 30. It's very similar in England. The average in England is 30. This would vary. As I said, modern Hebrew is a very unusual subject. So maybe there would be only 5 or 6 students in that class. But something like maths, maybe 35 or even 40 students. Okay, this one you should be able to answer. You go to different schools depending on your age. So I'll give you an example for Korea. Hopefully the pronunciation is reason. Golden Tiakyo. So what are the names of the different schools that you go to in your school life? The Korean names. Golden Tiakyo.
초등학교,
And what?
중학교, and 고등학교.
So 3 different schools are normal.
College.
Yes.
And college later on. So the situation in England is that you go to a primary school. So the first school you go to is called a primary school between 5 and 11. And then 11 to 16 or 18, you go to a secondary school. But if you go to England and you start talking to English people, there's lots of variations on this. This is the most common situation, but I'm a good example. Then when I went to school, I went to 4 different schools. There was a middle school, and then my family moved. So I ended up going to 4 different schools. And where there are private schools, they can arrange the schools however they want to. And in some cases, some people go to the same school throughout the whole school life. But the most common is primary school and then secondary school, and that would take you up to going to university. Thank you for coming, but I have one more thing to say. You have a question? No? Okay, that's right. I realise that I think there are 2 important things to say. You should always try your hardest, but if things don't work out how you think you want them to, you should always remember that there are alternatives. Who knows Stephen Hawkins? Do you know Stephen Hawkins? He is a theoretical physicist living in the UK. Just as he finished his university, when he was 21, towards the end of his university time, he was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And this meant that by the time he was in his early 20s, he could hardly move at all. So he had a very hard time. It would stop many people, and they thought that he wouldn't live past 25. So it was a really difficult time. But he went on to live till he was 76. He has a family, he had children, he's become world famous, and he is renowned in his area. And this is a quote that he said: "However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at." And that's a quote that he came up with. Okay, thank you very much.